I never imagined my 32nd birthday would be the night my entire world exploded into a million shimmering, toxic pieces. The Grand Magnolia Ballroom, nestled in the heart of Willow Creek Estates, sparkled like a scene from a Hollywood romance. Everything was exactly as Grant had insisted. Cream-colored roses climbing every column, soft jazz floating through the air, and 50 of our closest friends and business associates laughing around elegantly set tables. I wore the emerald silk dress he'd surprised me with. It fit perfectly, and for the first time in months, I felt truly beautiful, utterly adored. My father, Robert Vance, a titan in Nashville commercial real estate, had told me I looked radiant. My mother said I looked happy, and I was deliriously, completely happy, wrapped in the comforting illusion of my perfect life. Grant, my husband of 10 years, had orchestrated this magnificent event. "You only turned 32 once, Ellie," he'd whispered, his lips brushing my ear, "and my beautiful wife deserves the world to see how much I love her." He had invited everyone, my parents, his mother Helen, my interior design firm's most significant clients, and even people from the exclusive country club. The party was extravagant, easily costing 6 figures, but Grant had dismissed my worry with a wave of his hand. "You're worth every penny, my love." I should have known something was wrong. I should have seen the glint of something cold behind his dazzling smile. But I was too busy being grateful, too busy feeling blessed to notice the small, unsettling details. Clara and Scarlett, our 8-year-old twin girls, looked angelic in matching lavender dresses. They were quiet all evening, which I had initially put down to being overwhelmed by the crowd. Now I see it for what it was, the silence of small shoulders carrying a terrible, grown-up secret. They sat stiffly beside me, their usually animated faces unnaturally still. I reached over and squeezed Clara's hand, but she only offered a weak, distracted smile before exchanging a quick, weighted glance with her sister. The atmosphere was building, the music swelling to a crescendo, but a quiet, chilling storm was gathering at our table. At 8:30 p.m., the moment of truth arrived. My father, Bob, stood up for the toast. When he spoke, the room listened. "To my Ellie," he began, his voice thick with the kind of pride only an only daughter's father understands. 32 years ago, you came into this world and made it brighter. You've grown into an extraordinary woman, talented, kind, and wise enough to choose a husband who treats you like the queen you are." The room erupted in applause. I felt Grant's hand find mine under the linen tablecloth, his grip firm. I turned to smile at him, and his confident wink sent a rush of warmth through me. How lucky was I! How blessed to have this man, this life, this family. The deception felt impossibly strong, the lie powerful enough to trick an entire room of people. But even lies, no matter how perfectly constructed, cannot withstand the inevitable force of the truth. "Grant," my father continued, holding the room's attention with the easy power of a CEO, "thank you for honoring our family legacy. Thank you for being a wonderful father to Clara and Scarlett. Here's to many more years of happiness and success." As the room chorused, "To Ellie and Grant," and the crystal glasses clinked, I stood to hug my dad, tears welling up in my eyes. This was everything. This life, this moment, this validation from the man who built an empire. It felt like the pinnacle of my existence. I sank back into my chair, my heart overflowing, completely oblivious to the earthquake about to hit. It was during a quiet lull after the speeches but before the cake that my father casually dropped the real news, the announcement that turned Grant from a loving husband into a predator right before my eyes. I've been meeting with my estate attorney this week, Dad announced over his Eggs Benedict, drawing a few concerned looks. Just updating my will, making sure everything is in order. He flashed me a reassuring smile. I'm not getting any younger, sweetheart, and I want to make sure you're taken care of securely. My worry immediately vanished, replaced by a sudden rush of professional curiosity and gratitude. Then came the number. The commercial property portfolio downtown, Dad continued, gesturing toward the lights of Nashville visible from the ballroom window. All 15 buildings. Current valuation is right around $25 million. That will transfer to you, Ellie, in a phased process starting next quarter. The sheer magnitude of the figure hit me, a fortune my father had worked his whole life to amass. I nearly choked on my sip of water. Dad, that's too much, I whispered, utterly overwhelmed. He chuckled. You're my only child, Ellie. Who else would I leave it to? He then turned to Grant, whose casual posture had evaporated. Grant's eyes were suddenly sharp, focused, and disturbingly devoid of the earlier warmth. He leaned forward, an intensity in his gaze that was purely financial. Of course, Bob. I'd be honored to help Ellie manage them, Grant said, his voice smooth but eager. Have you considered placing them in a spousal lifetime access trust? What about the stepped-up basis for the transfer timeline? We could use certain strategies to minimize estate taxes. For the next 15 minutes, Grant peppered my father with detailed, pointed questions about property yields, trust structures, and ownership transfer mechanisms. He was no longer looking at my father as an esteemed elder. He was analyzing a closing deal. My father, trusting his son-in-law completely, answered every question meticulously, walking him through the complex legal structures. Grant nodded, absorbing the details like a sponge, his hand no longer squeezing mine, but resting on the table, poised like a hawk. It was then, in that sudden shift of focus, that I finally noticed the twins again. They weren't talking or playing. They were watching their father with a strange, unnerving intensity. They were memorizing something, storing information away, not as children fascinated by adult conversation, but as little detectives compiling a file. That intensity, that cold calculation, was the first real crack in my perfect world. But I quickly dismissed it. Children have such dramatic imaginations, I thought, pouring myself another glass of wine, oblivious to the storm they were preparing to unleash. The feeling of overwhelming, suffocating dread hit me before I even registered the sound. It was the moment Dad finished his toast and the room was focused entirely on me, soaking up the praise and the love when the heavy oak doors of the grand Magnolia Ballroom burst inward. The sound was so sudden, so violent, that several people shrieked. The jazz music screeched to a halt. Conversations died mid-word. Every single head in the room swiveled toward the entrance, including mine. And there he was, Grant. But wait, Grant was sitting right next to me. I could feel his rigid hand still gripping mine under the table, except now his grip went painfully tight for just a second before he released me completely. I looked from the man standing in the doorway, dressed in the same dark suit I'd bought Grant last Christmas, to the man beside me, whose face had gone completely bloodless, a sheet of pure, terror-stricken white. No, there was only one Grant Sullivan, the man who had just walked in with a woman I'd never seen before, and 2 small children was him. My brain short-circuited. Was this some kind of sick, bizarre surprise performance? It made no sense. The woman was pretty, younger than me, with long dark hair and a bewildered, almost fearful expression. She held the hand of a little girl, maybe 6, while a small boy, perhaps 4, clung to her other side. They all looked terrified, caught in a public spectacle they didn't understand. The Grant beside me stood up slowly, every movement agonizingly deliberate. The Grant by the door walked toward us with a forced, determined stride, his jaw set, his eyes wild. A man about to jump off a bridge. What is this, Robert?" my mother whispered, her voice laced with rising panic. My throat was completely constricted. I couldn't form a single syllable. The walking Grant reached the center of the room and, with a terrifying lack of hesitation, snatched the microphone from my father's hand. The feedback shrieked, making everyone wince. "Everyone, I need your attention," Grant's voice boomed, shaky but carrying through the immense room. "I know this seems crazy. I know this looks insane, but I can't live with lies anymore." He paused, gesturing toward the woman and children who stood frozen by the door. The little boy started to cry. "This is Bethany," Grant announced, his voice gaining a defiant strength. "And these are our children, Maya and Liam." The silence that followed was absolute. I don't think anyone even breathed. "This is my second family," he continued, his eyes meeting mine for the first time. And the look was one of cold, desperate self-preservation, not love. "I've hidden them for 8 years." My wine glass slipped from my nerveless fingers. The crash of crystal shattering on the marble floor was deafening. Red wine sprayed across my emerald dress, staining the white tablecloth. 8 years. Clara and Scarlett were 8 years old. He had been with this woman since before my babies were born. The room began to spin, the faces of my friends and family blurring into a canvas of shock and horror. This wasn't a nightmare I could wake up from. This was my reality brutally exposed. The chaos was instant, deafening. My mother made a small, pathetic whimper. My father, roaring with pure, unadulterated rage, lunged for Grant, only to be held back by my business partner and 2 other men. "You lying piece of filth!" Dad bellowed. Grant tried to turn towards me. "Ellie, I can explain," but his mother, Helen, stood up, her face a mask of shock and disgust. "Grant, have you lost your mind? What have you done to this family?" People were crying, shouting, pulling out their phones to film the unfolding nightmare. I sat frozen, unable to move, unable to feel anything but a deep, paralyzing numbness. My perfect life wasn't shattered, it was vaporized. Then I saw them, Clara and Scarlett, my babies. They walked toward their father with slow, deliberate steps, moving in the synchronized way twins sometimes do. Their faces were completely, chillingly calm. There was no confusion, no tears, only a rigid focus that made them look unnervingly older than 8. They approached Grant, who had slumped into a nearby chair, his face still ghostly white. They carried a small, square box between them, wrapped in silver foil, the same color paper used for a simple, innocent gift. The entire room fell quiet again, all attention fixed on the 2 tiny figures. "This is for you, Dad," Clara said, her voice steady without a single quaver. "From both of us," Scarlett added, her tone the exact mirror of her sister's. They held out the box together. Grant's hands trembled violently as he reached for it. "Girls, I didn't mean to." He couldn't finish the sentence. "Open it," Clara commanded. Grant, his composure entirely gone, fumbled with the silver wrapping. The paper fell away, and he lifted the lid. His face drained of the last vestiges of color. His hands began to shake so violently that the box slipped from his grip, tumbling onto the marble floor with a soft thud. The contents scattered everywhere like evidence at a crime scene. Papers, glossy photographs, official-looking documents with corporate seals and bank statements. Grant's legs gave out completely. He collapsed deeper into the chair, his head dropping into his hands, muffled sounds of despair escaping him. My father bent down and snatched up a document, his eyes scanning the text. His confusion morphed into absolute, terrifying fury in the span of a heartbeat. "This is a quitclaim deed," he announced, his voice shaking so badly I barely recognized it, "for Ellie's grandmother's house, transferring sole ownership to Grant Sullivan." He peered closer at the signature line. "It has Ellie's signature on it." I found my voice, a strange, choked sound that barely carried. "I never signed that. Never." My friend Jessica, a corporate lawyer, dropped to her knees, gathering the documents with the instinct of a professional crime scene investigator. "A power of attorney!" she gasped, giving Grant complete control over all of Eleanor's assets. Trust agreements, bank transfer authorizations. She looked up at Grant, her eyes blazing with righteous indignation. "These are all forgeries, Grant. You've been systematically forging your wife's signature to steal her property." The realization was absolute. My daughters hadn't given him a gift. They had delivered his indictment. The nightmare that had just unfolded was not a spontaneous tragedy. It was a carefully planned execution, orchestrated by my 8-year-old daughters over 6 long, terrifying months. It all started perfectly normally, which is the most cruel irony of all. 6 months before my 32nd birthday, it was a beautiful Saturday morning. Clara and Scarlett were supposed to go to their friend Maya's birthday party in Franklin, about 20 minutes outside of Nashville. I had gotten them adorable matching sundresses and kissed them goodbye as Maya's mother picked them up. What I missed was the voicemail that came half an hour later. I was in the shower, the phone on silent. Maya's mother had called to say the party was canceled. Maya had come down with a sudden stomach bug. She'd asked if I wanted her to bring the girls back to Willow Creek Estates, or if they could stay and play at Franklin's massive Riverwalk Park for a while, since they were already halfway there. My girls, always resourceful, chose the park, promising to stay put until I picked them up. As Clara would recount to me, months later, they didn't have a plan. They just wanted to run and play to salvage the excitement of the canceled party. Clara was swinging high. Scarlett was climbing the new, twisting jungle gym. It was a beautiful, sunny, ordinary day until Scarlett hissed from the top of the structure, "Clara, look! Isn't that Dad?" Clara looked where her sister was pointing, across the sprawling green lawn. Near the gazebo and a series of picnic tables stood Grant, but he was not alone. He was with a woman, a pretty woman with long, dark hair, wearing a sundress I hadn't seen. She was laughing brightly at something he had just said, and there were 2 children with them, the little girl and the small boy we would later see in the ballroom. "Maybe it's for work," Clara whispered, but her stomach was already clenching into a tight, cold knot. "Maybe it's a client meeting." Scarlett shook her head. "Clients don't have family picnics, Clara." They climbed down, silent as ghosts, and crept closer, hiding behind a massive, centuries-old oak tree about 40 feet away. Close enough to see, close enough to hear. The little girl was talking about ice cream. "Daddy, can we get ice cream after lunch?" "Daddy." Clara felt Scarlett's hand clamp onto hers, so hard it hurt. Neither of them made a sound. They watched Grant laugh his warm, familiar laugh and kiss the woman, a long, real kiss. The woman smiled up at him, saying something the wind carried clearly to the terrified twins. "I love our Saturdays together, just our family. Our family." Scarlet began to cry silently, tears streaming down her face, but Clara instinctively clamped a hand over her sister's mouth to prevent a sound. They couldn't let Dad see them. They watched for 20 more agonizing minutes as Grant helped the little boy throw a ball, hugging the woman who wasn't their mother, being a father to children who weren't them. When the other family started to pack up, the twins ran. They ran all the way to the park entrance, found a payphone, and called me. My perfectly ordinary Saturday had become the day their innocence and their trust was brutally murdered. When I finally picked them up, they were unnaturally quiet, huddled together in the back seat. They insisted they were just tired, but I heard the subtle tremor in Clara's voice that I couldn't quite place. That night, after I tucked them in, I heard the faint, urgent whispering from their shared room. "Did we really see what I think we saw?" Scarlet asked, her voice barely audible. "Yeah," Clara breathed back. "We did. And we can't tell Mom yet. We need proof. If we're wrong, we ruin everything. If we're right, he'll just lie." That night, the two 8-year-olds swore an oath of silence and embarked on a perilous, heartbreaking mission. This mission was anchored by a deeper connection to our family history, particularly to my grandmother, Eleanor Vance. The next day, I was flipping pancakes when Clara and Scarlet came downstairs, still affected by their secret. I asked them about their homework. Clara had to write a paragraph about someone she admired, and she had chosen Grandmother Eleanor. I read over her shoulder. Grandmother was smart. She never let anyone take advantage of her. She protected what was hers. "Why did you pick Grandmother, honey?" I asked, smiling at the surprisingly specific praise. "Because she was strong," Clara said seriously, her eyes fixed on the countertop. "She knew how to keep her legacy safe." The comment seemed strangely specific, even for my bright child. But I agreed, of course. Grandmother Eleanor had built this beautiful Victorian estate, 3 acres in Willow Creek, and had left it specifically to me when I turned 25. Every room held a memory, a testament to her strength. Grant often commented on my beautiful inheritance, always sounding proud to live here. Now, that memory, that legacy, was exactly what Clara felt compelled to protect. A few days later, while Grant was on a business trip to Chicago, 4 days, he'd said, missing Scarlett's school art show, I was working in Grandmother's rose garden. The twins were playing nearby, or so I thought. I only learned later that Clara had snuck into Grant's home office. She used her tablet to photograph papers left on his desk. Property tax documents, complicated corporate structures, and emails about my properties. I never knew they were checking his computer history at the library, being careful not to leave a digital trail he could erase at home. Later that same week, I heard the whispering again, more urgent this time. "Did you get pictures of all the papers?" Scarlett's voice. "Most of them," Clara replied. "There's legal stuff about Mom's commercial properties. Big words I don't understand yet. But it all links back to the house. We have to be careful not to ask Mom about anything yet." I almost opened the door, ready to ask what on earth they were doing, what kind of detective game this was. But something, maybe exhaustion, maybe my own naivete, stopped me. I simply went to my empty bed, smiled in the darkness, and thought about how utterly blessed I was. I had no idea that while I slept peacefully in Grandmother's safe, beautiful house, my husband was finalizing a plan to take it all away, and my 2 8-year-old saviors were compiling the evidence to stop him. The twins' transformation from happy typical 8-year-olds into cold, methodical investigators was complete within weeks of their discovery at Riverwalk Park. It began with the quiet observation of their father's routines. They noted how he always kept his personal cell phone face down on his desk, and how he stepped outside for certain calls, his voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial murmur. They were learning the language of betrayal, secrecy, coded behavior, and the subtle shifts in his demeanor when finance or property was mentioned. The breakthrough came 2 weeks after the park incident, born purely of Grant's carelessness. He had left his SUV unlocked in the driveway. Clara went out to grab a forgotten teddy bear from the back seat and noticed the glove compartment was slightly ajar. Inside, tucked under the car manual, was a sleek, black smartphone she'd never seen. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but the fear was overshadowed by a fierce, protective determination. She snatched it and sprinted to the backyard, finding Scarlett hiding near the garden shed. The phone was locked with a passcode. Disappointment threatened to crush them until Clara remembered. She'd seen Dad typing his code on his regular phone 100 times. His birthday, backward, 0712. With shaking fingers, she entered the sequence. The phone unlocked instantly, revealing dozens of messages, all addressed to someone named B with a heart emoji. Miss you already, honey. Can't wait for the kids' soccer game tomorrow. Maya asked about you. She loves her daddy so much. The girls devoured the messages, their world crumbling with each tap of the screen. In one thread, B, Bethany, mentioned their 8-year anniversary. 8 years, since before they were born. The betrayal was complete, absolute. They carefully replaced the phone and ran back inside, holding on to each other, crying quietly so their dad wouldn't hear. Over the next few weeks, the system sharpened. When Grant left his laptop open, Clara, the more technologically inclined twin, searched his cloud storage. She found hidden folders brimming with family photos, birthday parties they hadn't attended, Christmas mornings with those other children, and cheerful zoo trips. Simultaneously, Scarlett, with her eye for detail, focused on paper trails. While Grant was in the basement working out, she'd slip into his office, using her knowledge of the property transfer documents they'd photographed earlier. The most damning discovery came from a stack of bank statements, large, regular payments to an address in Franklin. Following this, she found the mortgage documents. Not just a mortgage, but a second mortgage, a massive $750,000 line of credit taken out against grandmother Eleanor's house, without my knowledge or signature. My home, my legacy, now leveraged to the hilt. She then found the property records for the Franklin address, a $750,000 cash purchase for a house registered under Grant's name. He had used the money he stole from my inheritance to buy a home for his other family. When they connected the dots, the children exchanged a look of new, frightening understanding. This wasn't just a divorce waiting to happen. This was a sophisticated, premeditated act of financial ruin. They knew then that they were the only ones who could stop him. The pieces of Grant's betrayal, the second phone, the financial records, the forged signature, were overwhelming. But the girls knew that paper could be explained away and text messages could be dismissed as mistakes. They needed unassailable proof. The final piece of the puzzle came from Grant's work emails, which Clara accessed by guessing his ridiculously simple password, his favorite sports team, followed by the year he met me. It wasn't just the emails to his lawyer that chilled them, detailing asset acquisition strategies and property transfer before dissolution, once the $25 million portfolio was legally mine. It was the attachment they found in a folder marked Personal Investments, a video file that sealed his fate. It was a recorded meeting, seemingly innocuous, between Grant and a financial consultant. The man was discussing offshore accounts. Once I get the property transfers finalized and clear the minor debts, we can liquidate the commercial portfolio, Grant's voice boomed from the video. The Willow Creek estate alone will net close to $3 million after the fraudulent mortgage is paid off. With the rest of the commercial properties, we'll have enough to never worry about money again. I'll meet you in the Cayman Islands in 2 months. The most horrifying part was his casual, cold indifference. What about Ellie? The consultant asked. Grant actually laughed, a cruel, familiar sound that made Clara's small hands shake as she downloaded the file onto the USB drive. By the time she figures out what happened, the properties will be in my name, legally. She'll get whatever crumbs are left after I sell everything and pay off my debts, which won't be much. This was the smoking gun. This was the proof that went beyond infidelity and exposed a deep, calculated intent to financially obliterate his wife and abandon his children. The twins realized that revealing this privately would only give Grant time to clean up his mess. He would explain, manipulate, and destroy the evidence. They needed a stage. They needed witnesses. They needed everyone who trusted him to see the truth at the exact same time. The decision was final. The silver box, wrapped to look like a birthday gift, would be delivered at the peak of his self-congratulation. And now we were back in the ballroom. The box had scattered its contents. My father was reeling. Jessica was barking orders, and the air was thick with panic. But the real moment of horror came when Clara, her composure still unnerving, picked up the USB drive that had fallen and calmly handed it to the Grand Magnolia's manager. "Could you play this on the large screen, please?" she requested, her voice small but firm. The screen flickered to life. First, short clips of Grant playing with his other children, his voice full of warmth and laughter, a warmth he had withheld from his own daughters. Then the damning, crystal-clear footage of him and his financial consultant, detailing the plan to liquidate my father's hard-earned legacy and vanish offshore. The room exploded. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a plot, a massive, life-destroying fraud exposed in front of everyone who mattered. My knees buckled. I reached out for the tablecloth, certain I was going to be sick, realizing just how close I had come to losing everything. The shock in the Grand Magnolia Ballroom was so profound that it manifested as a physical storm. "My father!" Bob roared like a wounded animal, breaking free of the men holding him and slamming Grant against a marble column. "You are going to steal my mother's house?" "Eleanor's house!" he bellowed, his face purple with fury. It took 3 men to separate them before Dad could do serious damage. Grant was shouting incoherent justifications, something about loving both families, about how complicated it all was. His words were meaningless noise in the face of the visual evidence playing out on the screen. Jessica Chun, my lawyer friend, instantly switched into high-power litigation mode. She was a whirlwind of precision, rapidly gathering the documents and organizing them into a coherent legal file. "Someone call the police!" she yelled, her voice cutting through the din. "This is felony fraud, forgery, and identity theft. He's been systematically stealing from his wife." As the sirens wailed faintly in the distance, another, more poignant tragedy unfolded. Bethany, the woman Grant called his second wife, stood crying, clutching her children, Maya and Liam. She was no longer just the mistress. She was another victim of his elaborate 8-year-long con. "You told me you were divorced!" she screamed at Grant, her pain mirroring mine. "You showed me papers. You said your ex-wife was crazy and kept your daughters from you. Grant tried to stammer an explanation, but Bethany slapped him hard. The sound cracked through the chaotic room. I loved you. Our children loved you. And you used us. You used stolen money to buy us a house with a forged mortgage. Her revelation of the mortgage source confirmed every fear the twins had. Grant had built his second life by stripping away my first. Clara and Scarlett stepped forward again, a perfect, unwavering unit. Scarlett held up the printed bank records, her small voice clear and steady. He's been stealing money from Mom's business account, too, she announced. $150,000 over 2 years. He told Mom the business was doing badly, but he was paying for his other family. Clara followed, holding the deed of sale for Bethany's house. And he used the money from the second mortgage on our grandmother's house, $750,000, for a cash purchase of the house in Franklin. The police arrived for officers trying to make sense of the high society crime scene. Jessica took immediate control, presenting the forged quitclaim deed alongside my driver's license signature, proving the massive fraud. As they put handcuffs, actual cold steel handcuffs, on Grant, I watched the process with a chilling numbness. When they led him toward the door, he looked back at me, a desperate plea in his eyes. Ellie, please. I love you. I've always loved you. His words meant nothing, less than nothing. As the restaurant slowly emptied, leaving only my family, Jessica, Helen, Bethany, and the children, my own daughters, approached me. They were finally crying, the tears streaming down their faces. We're so sorry, Mom, Clara whispered, her voice finally breaking. We had to wait. We knew he'd lie if we told you, privately. Scarlett's whole body shook. We couldn't let him steal grandmother's house. We saved us. I pulled them both into my arms and finally let go of the dam. I cried deep, wrenching sobs of pain and overwhelming relief. My 8-year-olds had saved our legacy, our future, and me. 3 months later, I woke up in my grandmother Eleanor's house. My house. And for the first time since the night of the explosion, I didn't immediately feel the paralyzing urge to cry. The sun streamed through the tall windows of the master bedroom, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Everything felt different now, lighter, as if a suffocating layer of deceit had been finally peeled away. The anxiety was gone, replaced by a deep, quiet resolve. The divorce proceeded with the swift brutality only legal certainty can deliver. When your spouse is facing multiple felony charges, fraud, forgery, embezzlement, there is virtually no room for negotiation. Jessica had handled everything personally, refusing to accept a single dime, working purely on friendship and professional outrage. Grant was out on bail, living in a cheap motel in the city, his real estate license revoked, his reputation utterly destroyed by the evidence Clara and Scarlett had compiled. The criminal trial was scheduled for the following month. The first step was securing the home. The forged signatures on the quitclaim deed and the power of attorney were invalidated instantly. The court issued an order compelling Grant to sign documents, removing his name from everything. But the massive, fraudulent $750,000 second mortgage still lingered over the property, a tangible reminder of his calculated theft. Then came the unexpected phone call. It was Bethany. We met at a neutral coffee shop, both of us nervous, both victims of the same man. She looked aged and exhausted. "I'm selling the house in Franklin," she told me, her voice barely a whisper, her hand shaking as she held her coffee cup, the one he bought with. She couldn't finish. With my grandmother's legacy, I finished for her. She nodded, tears welling up. I can't keep it, Ellie. I can't live there knowing it was bought with stolen money, with your children's inheritance. I'm selling it, and I'm giving you the money. All of it. I stared at her, stunned by this profound act of conscience. Bethany, you don't have to do that. Her voice turned fierce, driven by a desperate need for moral closure. Yes, I do. My children won't grow up in a house built on lies and theft. I won't profit from what he did to you. 2 weeks later, the wire transfer landed in my account. $750,000. The exact amount of the forged mortgage. I used every penny of it to pay off the debt completely. Grandmother Eleanor's beautiful Victorian estate was now free and clear, owned solely by me, safe from Grant's destructive greed forever. Bethany and I weren't friends, but there was a raw, mutual respect born from shared betrayal. She had offered a path to healing that transcended legal obligations. She had honored my family's legacy in a way my own husband never could. We had both been used, and now we were both free. The financial cleanup extended far beyond the walls of Grandmother Eleanor's house, thanks to the quiet, determined action of 2 key figures, my father, Robert, and surprisingly, Grant's mother, Helen. My father, deeply shaken by the knowledge that Grant had planned to financially wipe me out and tarnish the Vance family name, took swift and decisive action regarding the $25 million commercial property portfolio. I was going to wait until I was gone, he confessed one evening over a quiet dinner, his eyes full of regret for his initial trust in Grant. But I need to see you secure now. I need to know you are protected against any man ever again. He accelerated the transfer of the entire portfolio, placing every asset into an ironclad, irrevocable trust. The documents were drafted by his top legal team, the most secure financial instrument possible. The key feature was a provision stating that I was the sole trustee and beneficiary, and that no spouse, domestic partner, or individual outside of the direct Vance bloodline could ever have access to or control over the assets, regardless of marital status. This meant that even if I were foolish enough to remarry someday, my legacy, my business foundation, and my children's inheritance would remain solely and unquestionably mine. This is yours and Clara and Scarlett's, my father said, placing the heavy binder in my hands. Protected forever, my love. Nothing can touch it now. The second act of quiet restitution came from Helen, Grant's mother. The day after the police arrested her son, she had appeared at my door, her face gray with shame. She had apologized, stiffly but genuinely, and asked if she could still see the twins. "They are my granddaughters," she'd said, tears in her eyes. And I failed them. I failed to see who my son truly was. I had agreed to supervised visits. The girls deserved a grandmother who loved them. A few weeks later, an unexpected transfer appeared in my business account. It was a check for $150,000. Helen had quietly paid back the exact amount Grant had stolen from my interior design firm, money he'd convinced me was just business overhead. It is my responsibility as his mother to make restitution, she had stated simply in a brief note. My design business, far from collapsing as Grant had planned, was thriving. The scandal had brought attention, yes, but once people saw my work, they stayed for the quality and the integrity. I'd been featured in a Nashville Business Journal article titled, "Rising Above, Eleanor Vance's Journey from Betrayal to Empowerment." The exposure had brought in so many clients that I had to hire 2 additional designers to keep up. My father's foresight Helen's quiet moral obligation and Bethany's act of conscience had not only protected me from ruin, but had unexpectedly launched me into a new, stronger financial and emotional landscape. I was not just surviving. I was building something new, something real, something rooted in my own unshakable strength. It was the morning of my 33rd birthday. A year had passed since the catastrophe. I stood in Grandmother Eleanor's kitchen, flipping pancakes, the scent of cinnamon and butter filling the air. This morning, there was no lurking dread, no frantic check for hidden phones or legal documents. There was just the sound of Clara and Scarlett thundering down the stairs in their pajamas. "Morning, Mom," they chorused, climbing onto the breakfast bar stools. "Pancakes?" I asked, already pouring the batter. "Yes, please," Scarlett replied, and this time her smile reached her eyes. We were a family of 3, and we were navigating a new normal. Some days were still hard. Scarlett had occasional nightmares about being homeless, and Clara remained obsessively protective. But therapy was working. Dr. Chun, their psychologist, assured me they were remarkably resilient. They understood that Grant was in jail now, awaiting sentencing, and that we were safe. We had decided to reclaim the day. Last year's birthday had been ruined by a betrayal wrapped in silver. This year we were celebrating something small, intimate, and honest, just me, the twins, Jessica, and my parents. No restaurant, no crowd, just the people who were truly family. That evening, after a quiet, comfortable dinner where the conversation revolved around the girls' upcoming science fair, the twins presented me with a gift. It was wrapped in silver foil. I stared at it, a wave of nausea washing over me, until Clara gave me a small, knowing smile. "We're reclaiming silver paper, Mom," she said firmly. "It's going to mean something good now." Inside was a massive scrapbook they had painstakingly created. The cover, in Scarlett's careful handwriting, read, "Our real family and our real home." I opened it, my hands shaking again, but this time with gratitude. The first pages held recent photos, the 3 of us painting the living room a new, bright color. Clara at her first debate competition with a small trophy. Scarlett's latest artwork displayed proudly at school. Honest moments, real life. Interspersed throughout were older photos, genuine memories from before the betrayal, the twins at their 3rd birthday party, a mother-daughter trip to the zoo. The girls had carefully selected photos where Grant either wasn't present or could be easily cropped out, preserving the love while editing out the lie. They were preserving their real memories while removing the toxic presence. The very last page held a letter, written in both their hands, alternating sentences. "Dear Mom, Dad lied to all of us for 8 years. He tried to make us think we needed him to be a family. He tried to steal Grandmother's house and everything Grandpa worked for. He wanted to leave us with nothing. But we stopped him. We protected you and our home and our future. And we learned something important. We don't need him. We never did. We are stronger now. We are honest now. We know what real love looks like. It looks like you working hard and taking care of us. It looks like Grandpa making sure we're secure. It looks like Grandmother's house still standing strong. We're a real family, just the 3 of us, and that's not just enough, that's everything. We love you forever and ever. Clara and Scarlett." I couldn't see the final lines through my tears, but they were good tears this time. Tears of release, of gratitude, and the overwhelming realization that these 2 8-year-old girls had saved not only my property, but my entire capacity for hope. That night, I tucked Clara and Scarlett into bed in their room, the same room that had been mine when I visited Grandmother Eleanor as a child. Clara asked the final, most important question. "Mom, are you happy now?" I sat on the edge of her bed and thought about it, truly thought about the answer. I wasn't where I expected to be at 33. I was a single mother, publicly betrayed, carrying the weight of a scandal that everyone in Nashville knew about. My marriage had been exposed as a calculated financial lie, and my ex-husband was facing a long stretch in prison. But I was in grandmother's house, my house, that no one could ever take from me. My $25 million commercial properties were secured in an unbreakable trust. My business was thriving. My daughters were healing. We had honesty now and safety and a future that was truly ours, free from any hidden agenda. You know what, sweetheart? I said, smoothing Clara's hair back from her forehead. I'm not happy about what happened. I'm not happy your father hurt us and tried to rob us. But right here, right now, with you and your sister in our home, I am at peace. And because we have something your father never gave us, the truth, yes, I am happy. Scarlett, already half asleep, murmured, We protected you, Mom, just like you always protect us. My throat tightened with emotion. You did, baby. You absolutely did. You protected our family and our home and our future. I turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching them sleep. 2 8-year-old girls who had carried the weight of their father's felony crimes on their small shoulders and had been brave enough to do what needed to be done to save their mother. I walked down the hall, trailing my hand along the wooden banister that grandmother had touched thousands of times. This legacy, her strength, had almost been stolen, but now it stood stronger than ever. I climbed into bed in the master suite, in the house that was unquestionably, legally, permanently mine. For the first time in years, the constant, low-level anxiety was gone. I wasn't wondering where Grant was or what he was planning. I wasn't worrying about hidden betrayals or secret schemes. We were free. We were safe. Tomorrow is my 33rd birthday. A year ago, I was celebrating what I thought was a perfect life, a comfortable lie. Now, I am celebrating something far better. A real one, built on the solid ground of truth, family, and resilience. The most valuable inheritance you can pass down is not money or property, but wisdom and self-reliance. My grandmother's strength, which my daughters instinctively recognized, taught them to defend what was theirs. If you are an older person reading this, secure your assets now. Don't let your estate planning be a tool for opportunists. Build an ironclad trust, not just for your children's financial security, but for their protection against betrayal. Truth, no matter how painful, is the only currency that lasts. Never trade it for a comfortable lie. What is the greatest piece of advice or legacy that has protected you or your family from unexpected hardship? Share your thoughts below. Thank you for allowing me to share my story of betrayal, resilience, and reclaiming my family's legacy.